It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. That might be true about the French Revolution and it might be true about January and February, okay? This winter that we are experiencing. On the one hand, January has been the most deadly month of our pandemic existence so far. And there are very, very scary reports of even more virulent strains of COVID spreading throughout the United States and elsewhere around the world. And on the other hand, we have very, very effective vaccines that are being slowly and steadily shared here in the United States and globally. I believe there are now 4 vaccines that have demonstrated effectiveness. 2 of them have been approved for emergency use in the United States. 2 others, hopefully in the coming weeks, will see their approval. And of all of those 4, they have various degrees of effectiveness. But I believe of the tens of thousands who took part in trials as part of their testing process, I don't believe any of them have died of COVID. I don't even think any one individual in any of those trials has been hospitalized. So these are tremendously, tremendously effective vaccines, and they are being implemented at a time of terrible suffering and horrific, frightening death and spreading disease. And I spoke to a member of the shul earlier this week who said it's a frightening time, but also a time of hope. Okay, the fear is around us. There is a terrible, frightening disease, but there's hope. Like we see how this could end. We even maybe have a hint of when this will end, and that should give us some hope. I don't know if you've also been following, reading, listening to the sociologist Zeynep Tufekci, who is like one of the breakout stars of the past year. In February 2020, she was a lone voice saying this pandemic in China, it's going to come here and it's going to change our lives. And in February 2020, she had a hard time getting anyone with any influence to take her seriously. In February 2021, she's saying the vaccines are far more effective than you would think based on how we speak about them, and they're going to be effective at ending this pandemic. And so she was a voice of pessimism in February 2020. She's a voice of optimism this month. Of course, being right a year ago doesn't mean that she's right now, but I think she's a very wise person, and right now I find her voice a voice of hope. This dynamic between fear and hope is a dynamic that also animates this week's Torah portion. This is Parshat Yitro this week. It's the Torah portion of the revelation at Sinai, which is a moment of tremendous excitement and potential. It's the moment for which all creation was moving towards. That Bereshit, bara Elokim, that God created the world for the sake of Reshit, for the sake of the Torah. That's the prime motivation of creation, that Torah should exist in the universe. It's what our people was created to do, to stand at Sinai and to accept the Torah. What a hopeful moment, but also what a frightening moment. And the Torah portion ends describing this moment of hope and awe and fear, all kind of mixed up in one. Torah says, I encourage you to follow along on the source sheet attached to this video. Everyone saw the thunder and the lightning. Okay, this is synesthesia. They were able to see the sounds. It's kol shofar, it's ahar Hashem, the sound of the shofar and the mountain smoking. And when they saw this, they fell back. They stood at a distance. And they said to Moshe, you speak to us and we'll obey, but let not God speak to us, let we die. They didn't want to be so close to the mountain. They didn't want to experience God's commands so directly. And so Moshe responded, be not afraid. For God has come only in order to test you, the nasot, okay? In order that you fear, that the fear of God may be ever with you, so that you do not go astray. So the people remained at a distance while Moshe approached the thick cloud where God was. These 3 verses appear at the end of our parsha after the Torah's account of the 10 Commandments, the Aseret HaDibrot being given at Sinai. According to the Ramban, this happened before. Okay, then you can, as a long Ramban, you can see his arguments and whether you find them convincing or not. But I don't think it really matters. In the context of Revelation, there was certainly fear, and the outcome of that fear is that Moshe becomes an intermediary to hear God's message and to convey it to us. So we know that ultimately did happen, and whether it was before or after, in the midst of the Aseret Dibrot, I don't think fundamentally changes this dynamic that our fear kept us at a distance, and Moshe is the one who speaks to God and then conveys God's message to the rest of us. But there's a curious detail here, because verse 15 says everyone was frightened and they held back. And in verse verse 17, Moshe says, don't be scared, right? He says, right, Al tira'u, ki lavor nasot etchem ba'alokim, right? God's just coming to test you. Why? So that the fear of God, yirato al panechem levilti techteu, so that you should not sin. Okay, look, it's okay. You don't have to be alarmed. There's a reason why this is such a frightening experience. And then the next verse, verse 18, v'yamoda amirachok, they stayed at a distance. Okay, and then Moshe went up. So it seems that did Moshe fail to reassure them, or something else going on, and the Netziv tells us that the fear that kept us at a distance develops over the course of these verses, and maybe at first it's fear, it's terror at the smoke and the noise and seeing the sounds, and being in this proximity to God is frightening, whereas at the end, after Moshe explains what's keeping them at a distance is not fear, but awe of greatness, and that dynamic of awe and fear and love and hope is inextricably like part of what it means to be in relationship, to be conscious of being in the presence of God. Rambam writes about this beautifully in Mishnah Torah. Rambam, the rationalist, is also a poet. How does one come to love and fear God? How are love and awe cultivated? When a person reflects concerning God's works and his great and wonderful creatures, will behold through them his wonderful, matchless, and infinite wisdom, he will spontaneously be filled with love, praise, and exaltation, and become possessed by a great longing to know the great name. As David said, my soul thirsts for God, for the living God. And when he will think of all these matters, he will be taken aback in a moment and be stricken with awe and realize that he is an infinitesimal creature, humble and dark, standing with an insignificant and slight knowledge in the presence of the all-knowing. Okay? As Rambam spells it out, love of God brings us to try to learn more about God and to study all of God's creations. And then the more we appreciate, the more we contemplate, then we draw back and we recoil in recognition of our minuteness and our smallness compared to God. This dynamic has been described as a heartbeat. Okay, one always follows the next, onward and onward, love and awe, love and awe, love and awe. And this is distinct from the fear of punishment, as the Netziv writes. Okay, the point is not. It's not that you should fear God lest you sin, and you should fear God even without sin. That's the Netziv's reading, okay? Because the fear is not the fear of punishment. The fear it's yira, okay? It's not fear in this verse. It's awe, and that's what kept us apart. It's awe. So I think these moments of power, these moments of hope, these moments where we contemplate greatness, these are moments of awe, and that's mixed with that. It exists on a continuum with fear, and that's where we are today, all of us. Okay, there's great reason to be frightened. Okay, and if you're not frightened, you should be frightened. Okay, because COVID is still with us, and January is the most deadly month yet so far. Okay, but we can be hopeful as well because this will end. Okay, we gotta reinforce one another. We gotta reinforce ourselves to do the hard things that need doing, to keep our masks on and to limit our socializing, all these hard things. We got to do them, okay? Because we should be frightened, okay? But that fear, okay, is also coexisting with hope for a much, much better future, which really can be closer than it's been until now, and is, I believe, on its way day by day, drawing closer. I wish you all Shabbat Shalom, and really look forward to seeing you all back in shul, or seeing you online before then, or hearing from you in any way. Okay, best wishes. Take care.